Great Krypton, I've lost my Superman powers and gained those of the Flash, but I can't control my speed. I'll freeze to death when I reach outer space. That's why they had to say that he lost his Superman powers, because otherwise he'd be just fine in space. The day Superman became the Flash. This story is not exactly as advertised. There was some twisting happening here. It kinda sorta is like that. I posted this as an option in the community tab when I could not decide between zany Silver Age adventures. And while it was pretty even, this one edged out the others a little bit. And I had a few more, what? I've never heard of that one. And also, look at the Batman ears when Superman is Batman, I need to know. For the teaser page showcases Superman donning various costumes in the style of fellow JLA members. But in the reprints the title was changed, so that's now the 5 other identities of Superman. And not the day that Superman became the Flash. The former is a bit more accurate, but it's not as catchy. Or is it? They're about equal in my opinion. Share yours down below. Which is the better title? 5 Identities certainly promises you more bang for your buck. The digitization of this issue also adds creator credits, art credit, and explanation that it was changed, as well as an aggressively bright recolor, which I may or may not use, I'm deciding, TBD. There was effort put into this recolor. I'm on the fence about it though. It's nice to see this issue saved and updated and bright, but on scans of the original there seems to be more depth. The recolor feels a bit flat, even if on the original some of the colors have faded over time. Tell me what you prefer down below. This tale is from the year 1964 and was written by Edmund Hamilton with art by Al Plastino. Either way it's titled, we open on Superman nearly getting clipped by an arrow. This is he's flying around past an island on patrol. Whee!
That's a siren arrow. Someone fired it near me to attract my attention.
That's the siren call of fun. It's Green Arrow, and he's also gathered with the Flash, Batman, the Atom, and Aquaman. It turns out that Aquaman found a tape that's meant for Superman in the ocean. I found it while patrolling the sea bottom with Topo, my pet octopus. Oh, Aquaman, as if I could ever forget Topo. This is info for the reader, but it's amusing to think that Aquaman just goes around flexing on his fellow JLA members that he has a pet octopus. Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you over the sound of my pet octopus. Aquaman says the tape is from Jor-El. I sure hope it wasn't labeled because Aquaman has watched at least part of it. Maybe he just watched enough to see that it was for Superman and then stopped. Play the videotape for yourself. It was on this record playback machine when I found it. Sure it was, Aquaman. Sure it was. It is from Jor-El. He says that he attached the tape to the outside of the ship, because if he put it in there with Kal, it could break and that could hurt the baby, but outside it's gonna be totally fine. He has much trust in his shielding. Well, Superman's convinced, so it's time to watch this tape full of potentially intimate information in front of all of the JLA members who are there. La trust between these teammates. So what was it that Jor-El had to make sure that Kal-El knew? Why, the fact that he had access to a computer that could forecast different futures via mathematics. And it had a view screen and it showed him what Kal-El's life could be like on different planets if he sent him there instead of to Earth, which he ultimately chose. So he really needed to show this record to Kal to show him why he chose Earth, and also what his life would have been like if he had chosen another world. First up, planet Zan.
It's a baby. It's the tiniest baby I ever saw.
On this planet, the people are giant, well comparatively, but Zan has a yellow sun, so Kal is still superpowered. His adoptive father worries that if people find that out, they'll try and take their tiny baby from them. So he decides to teach his son to hide his powers.
My son, you are tiny but mighty. Never let anyone know of the powers you possess.
Me no tell. Thanks, giant Man of Steel style dad. While Kal lives a fairly average life, he sometimes finds himself ostracized because of his size. But one day he witnesses a hostage situation going down, decides that he needs to act. This looks like a job for, they haven't named him yet. Also, he shows back up at the scene in a costume, so he hurried home and made that right quick, unless he already had it. He's like, one day I'll need this. Its color scheme matches his regular clothes as Kal in this world, but that's of course so he can match the Atom, but he has a cape for gliding.
For once, I'm glad of my small size. I'm no bigger than these birds. Now I look like one of them from a distance.
But surely no costume can protect Kal's identity on this world. He's the only tiny person on the planet as far as I can tell.
Look, that tiny man came down the ventilator shaft. He's as small as Kal-El the pygmy. But it can't be Kal-El, for this one has terrific powers.
Yeah, must be some other tiny person who's just living on our planet who we've never seen before. Kal will not only have dealt more damage to his regular identity. Oh, here's Kal, the non-superpowered tiny person. Why can't you be more like our tiny superhero? For it can never be him. Kal doesn't have powers. That's too far-fetched. He doesn't even have to wear glasses or anything. He has to try way harder on Earth. And so Kal is slowly filled with a burning resentment towards the obliviousness of his people, eventually culminating in snapping and ruling them all I mean, the people love his superhero identity and they dub him Birdman. Birdman. And Cal finds value and fulfillment through helping other people. That's nice and all, but Jor-El is horrified, for there is no one for Cal to marry on this planet, for no one is the same size. Clearly this is insurmountable. That planet is out. Dodging marriage needs to be at least 40% of his son's life. Next up, Volare, another planet with a yellow sun. And a nice name, Volare. So on this planet, Cal is also going to have powers. This is a water planet, dare we say a water world. But with powers, that'll be no problem for Cal. Cal is adopted and his parents on this planet are thrilled with his powers. To them, it's an added bonus that comes with fostering him. The years pass and Kal-El adapts to a life in the sea, even developing telepathic powers like the other watery sea inhabitants. How? That's really interesting. Did their telepathy unlock something in him? I want to know all. We don't. We just know that it happens. Cal here just has a naturally helpful disposition. He's always using his powers to help people, the city, the sea life. There's no hiding his powers here. He's not a superhero per se, but his powers are noted and appreciated. Cal is always helping somebody. We're lucky he landed on our water world. This seems pretty good. What's wrong with this one? Well, Cal seems to have some vestigial memories of once living on the surface, so he'll spend time building land masses for himself on occasion, and then he'll go up there and sit there in the sun. Jor-El, seeing this, decides that Cal could never be satisfied on Volare. He needs land. Jor-El doesn't care how many same-sized people he could marry. Next planet, Natan. Well, let's just say that Jor-El was never gonna give Natan a chance. He should have just moved on. Not only does it have a red sun, but
It's amazing. The computer deduces that Natan is a backwards world whose civilization has made little progress.
yeah, how dare Natan develop at a different pace? Disgusting. How can Cal be happy on a planet without a supercomputer? He needs a planet with technology so advanced that no one's gonna listen to a scientist who says it's about to explode. Oh wait.
Even though the people know nothing about science, at least some of them are kindly.
You can stop watching, Jor-El. You've clearly made up your mind. Cal grows up and adopts a Robin Hood green arrow style uniform. Just cuz. It's fashionable across worlds. But Cal also wants to innovate, so he's always trying to modify the arrows that they're using. He starts making things that are more complex to make hunting easier, like a lasso arrow or a star arrow so that they can summon each other at night. But the people of this world, and specifically where Cal is living, want to use his inventions for war. No, say it isn't so. For only a backwards, no science world would let this happen. Also, Jor-El is using a very narrow definition of science and technology here. But no, Cal doesn't want his inventions used for harm, which fine, so he goes to live as a hermit. But really it's Jor-El's cultural elitism that did this planet in, as he decides that no one from a world as sophisticated as Krypton, even though Cal will not know Krypton, or really know of it, because on a planet like this there would be no way for him to know, but no one from there could ever be happy on a planet like this. Backwards. They would just know in their soul that they were meant for a world with better things, and that means more tech to Jor-El. Okay, what about Saruun? Saruun? A planet shrouded in eternal night. If I was Jor-El with this machine, this planet would be out. If I can't pronounce it, he can't go there. Guess that means most planets are out. No, the people won't have any kind of different evolutionary pattern or lifestyle because of the planet being in eternal darkness. It's just like Earth, but nighttime. So Cal cannot be Batman. Instead, he's going to be discount floppy years Batman. Batman at home. On this world, he's adopted by a lawman who had to retire because of a wound. So he trains his son to be the best lawman on the planet, but by that he means vigilante. He's a stage parent, but for crime. When the time comes for Cal to get out there as a vigilante, his father tells him he needs to be mysterious so criminals don't kill him. Look, out yonder window, a gyro. Maul your costume off that, son. Shouldn't it at least fly in? Come on, let it get closer. Okay. What was wrong with this world, Jor-El?
Kal-El would be a great lawman in that world, but I could not condemn him to live forever in darkness.
You knew it was permanently dark when you started looking at it. In all fairness, his son needs to live here forever, so I understand why he's being so picky, but also at the same time, it's a lot. 2 planets left, Gangor and Earth. Jor-El claims these 2 worlds are on the exact same trajectory, but just one has a yellow sun and one has a red sun. It's finally time for Cal to become the Flash, sort of, to Gangor, where Cal's adopted by a family whose new patriarch is very excited that his new son is an alien. For the science!
He wants to come from a world with tremendous scientific achievements. We'll adopt him. I'll be the envy of all the other scientists. They don't have alien sons.
In this environment, Cal grows up to be a brilliant scientist, and at a scientific level that Jor-El approves of. That's important. Even though this lab situation has no safety precautions, he was safe from making and testing all those arrows. Cal has no powers on this world, and yet his dad is just shooting him up with energizing force because Cal says he'll be fine. It's this energizing ray that gives Cal super speed. And Cal had a costume ready just for such an occasion. It has the Flash's headpiece, sort of, but his hair is still out, and it looks like he just flattened out the Flash's costume and made it a cape. The costume is so he can withstand the friction of the speed. Does the cape help with that?
The yes I put on the costume stands for speed.
Ah, the day when it was just a giant monogram. It didn't have to be gussied up to mean a crest or anything like that. Some people just like initials on things. At first it's all great, he's going really fast, but there's too much speed. He can't control it, and he runs runs out into space and dies, assumedly. Jor-El turns it off before that part. Well, that leaves Earth. We don't need a forecast. We know how great Superman's life is on Earth, right? Right? And so ends the tape. Jor-El just really needed Cal to know about all the other lives he could have had, because there's no way that Cal could potentially have disagreed with his father's decision and maybe wanted to go to one of those other planets after seeing them. Is Cal in crisis now?
How strange those lives I would have lived on other worlds.
But what his friends got out of that tape was, wow, you were like a whole Justice League. I mean, not really, unless you count him doing it one at a time, and he kind of sort of had some of the abilities on some of the planets. He couldn't actually shrink when he was the Atom. He was just tiny. Also, he wasn't a hero on the backwards planet. He was just an archer who happened to have trick arrows to make life easier. And his costumes were the same, cause same wavelength across space and time. Some costumes, it's just known in the essence of the universe that they'll look good. I'll say this story surprised me. Going in, I was expecting much more of a basic swap, but they got pretty creative with it. It wasn't just a palette swap of each character. These weren't lazy reimaginings where everything happened exactly the same way, but with Clark. And the idea of Clark having different lives is of course a classic nowadays, be it on other worlds or on Earth. It's a neat idea and interesting to play with, and it stems from a place that one can get behind. The idea that of course Jor-El would have looked at other worlds. This was a very important decision. There were other choices than Earth, and that's fascinating to contemplate. For those wondering, yes, Lara is aware he's doing this, just in case it was keeping you up at night. The presentation makes Jor-El come across a bit fickle, especially as it's established that the machine isn't 100% accurate. And the very decision that he is making to make the rocket anyway is going against the forecasts he's seen from the machine, that it's pointless. So the concept, while if one applies themselves to it, can have a lot of depth and pathos, is not necessarily being portrayed that way in this iteration, but that's still there and one can still take that from it. It's going for a more what if imaginary tale kind of situation. But you could get gut-wrenching with this. A father desperately searching for what he hopes to be the best life for his son, though he knows he'll never have a way to verify if he made the right choice. Here he is making all these decisions on his son's behalf based on what he assumes will or won't make him happy based on these projections that aren't entirely complete. There's a lot you can do with that. But that's for the edgy update. Or another edgy update, because the story did have an update. We'll get to that in a moment. The connection to the Justice League is also one you need to reach a tiny bit for. But again, the fact that they go for more unique comparisons rather than one-to-one swaps does make the story more fun. The Flash must be feeling so smug. Barry's standing there thinking, I didn't just run up into space. Batman's probably congratulating himself on his ear choice on the cowl. The droopy ears do not strike fear into the hearts of criminals. Maybe they do on that world. For the Dyro is the most dangerous of beasts. This idea was revisited in the 90s with the crossover of the one-man JLA. It was the Triangle era, so you had to buy at least 3 Superman comics to get everything all together. This storyline reworks the concept into an ongoing arc, and it keeps a lot of it, even Jor-El doing projections on just where to send Cal. And the scenarios are much more fleshed out, and you see them for longer, and you also get to see him interact with some other characters from the DC universe. In this arc, the focus is more on aliens trying to determine what exactly is it that made Clark Superman. And that is an interesting idea. It's not fully explored in the original story, because Cal doesn't automatically become a superhero on each world, which again is something interesting and worth exploring. He's almost rebelling on the first planet because his father told him never to reveal his powers. The 90s one is a fun little crossover arc, and you get to see things like, what if Clark was a Green Lantern because the Guardians were his dad, or what if he was on Thanagar? They're both fun and both play in and bring out some of the tropes of the era that they're in. It's also a good example of how not everything in the Silver Age was overly zany. For the most part, the concept is played fairly seriously. And one can see that others saw the potential in the original story in the fact that it's revisited, and one could still do it again. There's more to do with it. Do you agree with Jor-El's choice? Would you have chosen a different planet? Water world for life? Do you feel it's reaching for them to say that he took on the roles of the entire Justice League? Was this just not for you at all? You don't like tales like this? Share all your thoughts down below. And while you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some of your day spent discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.